My sister announced her fourth pregnancy and said, "The kids will move in with you for a few months, until I give birth." I refused and walked away. A week later, she left them on my porch and called the cops when I called her crazy. My name is Kate. I'm 32 and I work as a software developer for a large tech company. The good news is that I work remotely, which means I can work from my home office. The bad news is that my family thinks working from home means I'm always available to babysit. I have parents who are retired and an older sister named Michelle who's 37. Michelle got divorced about 2 years ago and has 3 kids, Alex who's 9, Emma who's 7, and Tyler who's 6. Since the divorce, Michelle has been determined to get back into the dating scene and find a new husband. The problem is having 3 young kids makes dating pretty complicated. So Michelle's solution has been to constantly drop her kids off at my place. At first, it was just for a few hours here and there when she had dates. But over the past year, it's gotten completely out of hand. I'm basically raising my nephews and niece. Alex, the oldest, is actually a pretty calm kid and helps me manage the younger, too, which is honestly the only reason I haven't lost my mind completely. But even with his help, taking care of 3 kids while trying to work full-time is exhausting. Michelle lives in a rented apartment and gets decent alimony from her ex-husband. She works part-time at some marketing firm, maybe 20 hours a week. Meanwhile, I'm pulling down good money as a senior developer, and I've been helping her out financially on top of everything else. Our retired parents also give her money regularly. Here's what a typical day looks like for me. I wake up at 6 a.m. to get started on work before the kids wake up. Around 7 a.m., Michelle drops them off on her way to work, or whatever she's doing that day. Then I have to get them breakfast, make sure they're dressed, take them to school and squeeze in a few hours of coding. After school, it's homework time. I sit with each kid and help them with math, reading whatever they need. Then I have to figure out dinner for 4 people. By the time I get them fed, bathed, and settled down for the night, it's usually 9 or 10 p.m. That's when my real workday starts. I stay up until midnight or later trying to catch up on all the projects I couldn't finish during the day. I've missed several deadlines already, which is not good for my career. The worst part is that Michelle acts like this arrangement is totally normal. She never asks if I'm available or if it's a good time. She just assumes I'll take care of her kids whenever she needs me to. But apparently, things are about to get much worse. This past Wednesday, Michelle called me around lunchtime. "Kate, I need you to come to dinner at Mom and Dad's this Saturday. I have something big to announce. The whole family needs to be there. Can't you just tell me now?" "No, it has to be in person. Trust me. You'll want to hear this." I had no idea what she was planning to announce, but I was curious. Maybe she'd finally found a serious boyfriend who would help with the kids. That would be the best news I'd heard in months. Saturday came, and I drove over to my parents' house around 5 p.m. Michelle's car was already in the driveway along with another car I didn't recognize. When I walked in, I saw Michelle and the kids in the living room plus a guy I'd never met before. He looked to be in his late 30s, average height, kind of nervous. "Kate," Michelle jumped up and hugged me. "I'm so glad you're here. This is..." Derek stood up and shook my hand. "Nice to meet you. Michelle's told me a lot about you." "Nice to meet you too." My parents came out of the kitchen and we all sat down for dinner. The kids were being unusually well behaved, which should have been my first clue that something big was coming. About halfway through the meal, I couldn't stand the suspense anymore. "Michelle, what's this big announcement?" Michelle cleared her throat and took Derek's hand. She was practically glowing. "Everyone, Derek and I have some exciting news to share." She paused dramatically. "I'm pregnant and Derek and I are getting married soon." The room went completely silent for about 5 seconds. Then my parents started screaming with joy and rushed over to hug Michelle. Derek was grinning and accepting congratulations. I just sat there in shock. Michelle was barely managing the 3 kids. She already had working part-time, living off alimony and family handouts. How was a 4th child going to improve this situation? "Congratulations." I finally managed to say, "That's big news." "Thanks, Kate, but actually there's more." Michelle turned to me with a casual smile that immediately made me nervous. "I'm going to need you to take the kids for a few months while I get through the pregnancy and recover after the birth." I almost choked on my water. "What?" "Just temporarily. So I can focus on staying healthy during the pregnancy." And then, after the baby comes only time to adjust. Michelle, are you completely out of your mind? Her smile disappeared. Excuse me. You want me to take care of your 3 kids for months on top of everything I already do for them? Kate, there's nothing wrong with you. Helping out with your nephews and niece, helping out. I'm already raising them. I feed them, help with homework, buy their clothes, pay for their activities. I'm exhausted. Michelle's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe you're being so selfish and greedy about this. I turned to my parents expecting them to tell Michelle she was being ridiculous. Instead, my mother gave me a stern look. Kate, you don't have children of your own. You don't understand how hard it is to raise them. I stared at her. I don't understand how hard it is. I've been taking care of Michelle's kids constantly for the past year. That's different. Dad said Michelle needs our support right now. What about my support? What about my job? My life? If Michelle wants to have another baby, she should be able to do it without being criticized by family. Mom said I stood up from the table, then she can do it without my help too. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door while Michelle started crying. And my parents started yelling at me about family obligations. I drove home in a rage, and by the time I got there, my phone was already blowing up with angry messages. Michelle, you're a terrible sister. How can you be so selfish? Mom, Kate, you should be ashamed of yourself. It's your duty to help family. Dad, Michelle needs support right now, not criticism. You're being unreasonable. I didn't bother responding to any of them. I figured they'd calm down and realize how ridiculous Michelle's request was. Asking someone to take care of 3 kids for months while you have a baby and get married? That's insane. I turned off my phone and went to bed early for the first time in months. The next week was the most peaceful I'd had in over a year. Michelle didn't drop the kids off once. My parents didn't call to guilt trip me. It was just me, my work, and blessed silence. I was actually able to finish all my projects on time. I even went above and beyond on a few assignments, and my boss mentioned giving me a performance bonus. For the first time in months, I felt like I was actually good at my job again, but I should have known it wouldn't last. Saturday morning, I was sleeping in for the first time in forever. When loud knocking woke me up, I looked at my clock, 7 a.m. I stumbled downstairs in my pajamas and looked through the people. My 3 nephews were standing on my front porch with suitcases. I opened the door immediately. What are you guys doing here? They looked scared and confused. Alex was holding Emma's hand, and Tyler was clutching a stuffed animal. Mom brought us here, Alex said quietly. She put our suitcases by your door and told us to wait 5 minutes, then knock. She said you'd take care of us. I felt my blood pressure spike. She left you out here alone. We weren't alone long, Alex said quickly, but we didn't know what to do. I brought them inside and got them settled on my couch with some juice and cereal. Then I called Michelle. The phone rang about 10 times before she answered. What? Michelle, you left 3 kids outside with no adult supervision. Anything could have happened to them. Please. It was 5 minutes. You would have taken them eventually anyway. Are you completely insane? Look, Kate. I know you'll cave and help me out. You always do. The kids need stability right now. Come pick them up right now. Can't Derek? And I have plans today. She hung up on me. I called my parents immediately. Mom, Michelle just dumped her kids on my porch and drove away. There was a pause. Kate, your sister is trying to build a life with Derek. She needs to focus on her relationship right now. What about focusing on her existing children? You need to stop being so selfish and help your family. I hung up in disbelief. 20 minutes later, there was another knock at my door. This time, it was 2 police officers. Ma'am, we received a call that you were planning to abandon 3 children. What? No, that's completely wrong. The caller said you wanted to kick your nephews out of your house. Couldn't believe it. Michelle had actually called the police on me, officers. That's not what happened at all. My sister dropped her kids off here this morning and left them on my porch unsupervised. Is that true? One officer asked Alex. Alex nodded. Mom brought us here with our staff and told us to wait outside until she left, then knock on at Kate's door. Actually, I said I have security footage of what really happened. Can you wait a minute? I'd installed cameras 2 months ago because there had been some break-ins in the neighborhood. I'd never mentioned them to my family. I pulled up the footage on my phone and showed it to the officers. You could clearly see Michelle dragging suitcases up to my door, talking to the kids, then getting back in her car and driving away while they stood there alone. This is pretty clear evidence of child abandonment. One officer said, "I want to file a report." I said I want to contact Child Protective Services about this. The officers took detailed statements from me and the kids. They also took a copy of the security footage as evidence. Children can stay with you for now, but CPS will need to investigate this situation, one officer explained. The next day, a CPS worker named Janet came to my house. She interviewed me and the kids separately, asking about their living situation and how often they stayed with me versus their mother. From what I'm understanding, these children spend most of their time in your care, Janet asked. Unfortunately, yes, their mother drops them off constantly while she goes out, and you're financially supporting them. I buy their clothes, pay for their activities, help with school supplies. My sister gets alimony, but it doesn't seem to go toward the kids. Janet made notes and said they'd be opening a case to investigate Michelle's fitness as a parent. That evening, Michelle burst through my front door without knocking, called CPS on me. "Are you out of your mind? You left 3 kids outside for 10 minutes with no adult supervision? That's abandonment. They're going to take my children away because of you. Maybe that would be the best thing for everyone." Michelle's face went red. "I'm taking my kids home right now." "No, you're not. Police and CPS said they stay here until this gets resolved. You can't keep my children from me. I'm not keeping them from you. You gave them up when you dumped them here." Michelle stormed out. And 30 minutes later, my parents called Kate. "You've ruined everything." Mom screamed. "Your sisters' children could end up in foster care." "Actually, Mom, their father called me yesterday. CPS contacted him about what happened. He wants custody. He's tired of paying alimony to Michelle while she dumps the kids on other people. He's going to court to get them." There was silence on the other end. "He'll stop paying alimony and take full custody of his children." Honestly, it sounds like the best possible outcome. My parents hung up on me. I looked at the 3 kids watching TV in my living room. For the first time since this whole mess started, they looked relaxed and happy. The kids stayed with me for the next month while the CPS investigation continued and court proceedings began. It was actually the most stable period those children had experienced in years. Without Michelle constantly dropping them off and picking them up at random times, we developed a real routine. I'd work in the mornings while they were at school, pick them up at 3 p.m., help with homework, make dinner, and then finish up any remaining work after they went to bed. Alex, Emma, and Tyler seemed happier and more relaxed than I'd ever seen them. They weren't constantly wondering when their mom would show up or disappear again. They knew exactly what to expect each day. Their father, James, called me regularly to check on them and coordinate the legal proceedings. "Kate, I want you to know how grateful I am," he said during one call. "I had no idea Michelle was dumping the kids on you constantly. She's been doing it for over a year. I'm so sorry. I've been paying her $2,500 a month in child support, thinking she was actually taking care of them. Most of that money went to her dating life and shopping, from what I could tell. That's about to change. My lawyer thinks we have a strong case for full custody." Court date finally arrived. I had to take the day off work to testify. The courtroom was packed with everyone involved. Michelle and Derek, James and his lawyer, my parents, CPS workers, and the kids' teachers. Michelle went first. She testified that she loved her children and wanted to continue raising them as she always had. "I'm a good mother," she said through tears. "I just needed some help during a difficult time in my life." Her lawyer tried to paint me as an interfering aunt who had manipulated the situation to take the children away from their loving mother. Then James testified, "Your Honor, I've been paying substantial child support for 3 years, believing my ex-wife was the primary caregiver for our children. I've now learned that my sister-in-law, Kate, has actually been raising them while my ex-wife pursued romantic relationships." The prosecutor called me to testify next. "Miss Kate, can you describe your typical week with the children over the past year?" "I had them 5 to 6 days a week. Sometimes more. I fed them, helped with homework, their clothes, paid for their activities. Michelle would drop them off in the morning and often not pick them up until the next day." "Did you agree to this arrangement?" Not really, just gradually became the expectation. Anytime I tried to say no, Michelle would guilt-trip me or my parents would call me selfish. And the morning of the incident in question, Michelle left 3 children on my doorstep unsupervised and drove away. She told them to wait 5 minutes before knocking, meaning they were completely alone outside. Kids' teachers were called as witnesses. Mrs. Patterson, Alex's teacher, testified that I was listed as his emergency contact and attended all parent-teacher conferences. In 3 years, I've met with Kate dozens of times about Alex's education. I've only spoken to his mother twice. She said Emma's teacher said the same thing. Kate is the one who handles Emma's school issues. She signs permission slips, attends school events, picks her up when she's sick. Even Tyler's kindergarten teacher testified that I was the primary point of contact for everything school-related. My parents tried to defend Michelle, but their testimony was weak. Michelle is a good mother who's just going through a hard time. Mom said she's trying to build a stable life for her children with a new partner, Dad added. But when the prosecutor asked them directly how often the children stayed with me versus Michelle couldn't give a clear answer. The most damning evidence was the security footage. The judge watched it twice, and you could see his expression change as he realized what had happened. Then Michelle's text messages were presented as evidence, all the ones where she demanded, "I take the kids for months," because she needed to focus on her new relationship. The defendant clearly views childcare as something to be outsourced to family members while she pursues personal interests. Prosecutors said Michelle's lawyer tried to argue that family helping with childcare was normal, but the judge wasn't buying it. There's a difference between occasional babysitting and essentially abandoning parental responsibilities, he said. After 2 days of testimony, the judge recessed to make his decision. A week later, we all returned to hear the verdict. Based on the evidence presented, I'm awarding full custody of the 3 minor children to their father, James Mitchell. The judge announced. Michelle burst into tears. My parents looked stunned. James smiled and nodded at me gratefully. The court finds that the defendant has consistently failed to provide stable care for her children, instead relying on extended family to fulfill her parental obligations. The incident of child abandonment demonstrates a concerning lack of judgment regarding child safety. The judge continued child support payments will cease, and the father will assume full financial responsibility for the children. It was over a few weeks later, James moved the kids into his house. He'd set up bedrooms for all 3 of them and enrolled them in schools near his place. The transition was surprisingly smooth. The kids had always liked their dad, and they were relieved to finally have stability. They still visit me sometimes on weekends. Alex told me he feels much happier now that he doesn't have to worry about where he'll be sleeping each night. Michelle married Derek in a small ceremony. She didn't invite me, which was fine by me. She gave birth to her 4th child a few months later. My parents haven't spoken to me since the trial. They blame me for destroying Michelle's family, even though I was just protecting the kids, but I don't care. My nephews and niece are safe, stable, and happy with a parent who actually wants to raise them. I believe I did the right thing. Sometimes protecting children means making hard choices that other people won't understand, but those kids deserve better than being treated as inconveniences to their mother's dating life. 6 months after the trial, my life had completely transformed. For the first time since Michelle's divorce, I was living entirely for myself. I could work normal hours, sleep in on weekends, and make plans without worrying about sudden childcare emergencies. My career took off in ways I hadn't expected without the constant interruptions and late-night catch-up sessions. I was able to take on more complex projects. My boss promoted me to senior development lead, which came with a substantial raise and the opportunity to work on cutting-edge AI applications. I even started dating again. I met Ryan, another software engineer, at a tech conference. When I told him about my situation with Michelle's kids, he was amazed. "You basically raised 3 children that weren't yours while working full-time," he said. "That's incredible." It was exhausting. I don't know how single parents do it. Most single parents don't also have demanding tech jobs and family members who take advantage of them. Ryan was right. I'd normalized a completely dysfunctional situation for so long that I had forgotten what a reasonable life looked like. The kids were thriving with their father. James had enrolled them in better schools, and they all seemed much more competent and settled. Alex was excelling in advanced math classes. Emma had joined the school choir, and Tyler was playing Little League baseball. They visited me every other weekend, and our relationship was so much healthier. Now, instead of me being the stressed out caregiver who was always behind on work, could actually enjoy spending time with them. We'd go to movies, museums, or just hang out and play video games. Kate, are you happier now? Alex asked me during one visit. You seem more relaxed. You don't look tired all the time anymore. I am happier. Are you guys happy living with your dad? Emma chimed in. Dad makes dinner every night and helps with homework. And we don't have to worry about where we're sleeping. It was confirmation that the custody change had been the right decision for everyone. Michelle, on the other hand, was struggling through mutual relatives. I heard that her marriage to Derek was rocky. Taking care of a newborn without being able to dump older kids on family members was apparently much harder than she'd anticipated. She'd also had to get a full-time job since the child support payment stopped. Derek worked in sales and didn't make nearly enough to support a family of 3 on his own. I heard from my cousin Lisa that Michelle had asked several family members for money, claiming she couldn't afford baby formula and diapers, but most of our relatives had heard about what happened and weren't eager to enable her again. My parents were still furious with me. They'd completely cut contact, which honestly was a relief. I was tired of being guilt-tripped every time I tried to set reasonable boundaries. The rest of my extended family had come around. My cousin Mark called me a few months after the trial. Kate, I owe you an apology. We all knew Michelle was taking advantage of you, but nobody wanted to get involved in family drama. I appreciate that what you did took guts. Those kids are so much better off now. They really are, honestly. It was probably the wake-up call Michelle needed. Maybe having to actually raise her own child will teach her some responsibility. I wasn't holding my breath on that one, but stranger things had happened. A year after the trial, I bought my first house. It was a beautiful 3-bedroom place with a big backyard and a home office. I invited James and the kids over for a housewarming party. This place is amazing, and Kate Tyler said, running around the backyard. Thanks, buddy. You guys will always have rooms here when you visit. James pulled me aside while the kids were exploring. Kate, I can never thank you enough for what you did. I know it cost your relationship with your parents and sister. Those relationships weren't healthy anyway. I'm better off without that drama. The kids are doing so well. Alex made on a roll last semester, and Emma's teacher says she's one of the most competent kids in her class. They're great kids. They just needed stability. They got that from you first. And now from me, you saved them from years of chaos. Looking back, I realized that standing up to Michelle had been the best decision I'd ever made, not just for the kids, but for myself. I'd spent years enabling her irresponsible behavior because I felt guilty and didn't want to rock the boat. But sometimes being a good aunt, sister, or daughter means saying no to unreasonable demands. Michelle had assumed I'd always be available as free childcare because I'd never enforced boundaries before. She thought she could escalate to essentially abandoning her kids with me, because I'd always given in to smaller requests. But there comes a point where you have to choose between enabling someone's dysfunction and protecting the innocent people being hurt by it. Those 3 kids deserved better than being treated as burdens to their mother's social life. They deserved a parent who actually wanted to raise them, not someone who saw them as obstacles to overcome. Now, they had that. I had my life back. I was proud of the choice I've made. It wasn't easy, and it cost me some relationships, but it was the right thing to do. Sometimes standing up for what's right means accepting that some people will never forgive you for it. But living with integrity is worth more than maintaining relationships built on manipulation and guilt. I was finally free to build the life I wanted, and that felt better than any family approval ever could.